once upon a time, I got to play the Queen, Elizabeth I, in Shakespeare in Love, and it was sublime. God may have saved the Queen, but the Queen saved me. It was a period of darkness and challenge when this blessed respite was laid at my feet. A plethora of cherished people were dying like flies around me. A few dear friends, my stepson, my dad, and then my sister Kathy, and I had no time to grieve for any of them because I was too busy flying from LA to Denver every couple of weeks to care or visit or keep things together for my blind, nearly deaf, dizzy, confused, grieving 94-year-old beloved mother who was living alone in a beautiful but cramped apartment where I would stay with her and sleep, if you want to call it that, on a very uncomfortable roll-out bed. And here in LA, I was sitting with my friend Hank while he got chemo infusions, and, oh yes, my dear friend Ruthie, my person, she had some mysterious ailment, and I was growing more and more concerned, and I was doing a play, Rabbit Hole, which was all about grief, and I didn't know it, but I needed a break. And it was then that my friend, Maggie Cahill, who I've loved and worked with since the 70s, rode in on the wings of salvation. She's the artistic director at Capitol Rep in Albany, and she would be directing Shakespeare in Love. "Come and be my queen," she said, and I responded with, "Hallelujah." Except I had doubts, as did Maggie. She sent the contract, but asked, "Are you sure, Lo? I want you rested, not worried about being in 2 or more places at once. I want you, my dearest friend, not to have extra pressure on you. I mean it. Laurie, I want you to take care of you." And of course, the subtext, please don't breach this contract. It would put the whole theater in jeopardy and ruin me. And it was risky. Another friend had died. Hank wasn't handling chemo well. Ruthie was getting worse, and I was exhausted. And would I be able to focus, memorize lines, find and sustain the true essence of the Queen? I was barely holding off an avalanche of grief. And what if something happened to Mom? Could I really guarantee that I could stay there without being called away for an emergency? But here's the thing. Deep in my core, I knew it was critical for me, right then, to embrace life and joy. It was vital to run, not away from pain, but toward happiness, for myself. My sister Kathy, who passed away just 2 months before, was hovering around me, cartwheeling through the ether, turning on electronics, ringing bells, and shouting, "Go, go, go, little sister. Take advantage of that body of yours. Do all you're able to do while you can." So what if I was bone weary? I knew from years of my body and brain work that movement is energizing, that saying yes is half the battle. Choosing something makes it happen. And Mom, who wore a sweatshirt proclaiming herself queen of everything, thought that I should be a queen too. My acting career was her vicarious pleasure. She said it would be a sin not to do it because I was afraid something might happen to her. I closed my eyes. Imagine doing it, and it felt scary. And yet, exhilarating. Not doing it felt safer, but dark and sad. If I were so lucky to live, say, 4 more years, which I have, I wanted to be able to look back and say, "Yay, I did that." And here's the clincher. The real Queen Elizabeth I, her most famous quote is, "All my possessions for a moment of time." So, Visualizing Mom managing until at least June, I said yes to a concrete signed contract without a caregiving clause, which made it impossible for me to fly to Denver or sit with Hank at chemo because I was in New York, busy playing the Queen. Regal, beautiful. Let's face it, awesome costume. All 35 pounds of it that hung from straps on my shoulders, form-fitting, intricately embroidered bodice with a skirt that was 3 feet in diameter. A small dog sat on it for curtain call. I filled up an entire hallway. No one could get around me. I had a splendid ruff, a bejeweled crown. The Queen. Not a lot of lines in this play, a smallish role, but rich in history and influence. Oh God, I had such a good time researching her. I found out, besides imperious, she was charming, courageous, with a histrionic command of grand public occasions. She was bombastic, and yet had an affinity for the language of love. Considered to be rather manlike, she had an extreme unwillingness to spend money and once said, I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England, too. Slipping into her skin, taking on her voice each night was like stepping into myself in a past life. It seemed perfectly normal and appropriate that everyone wanted my approval. Regaled me, practically worshipped me. Everyone laughed at all my jokes. And the world stopped whenever I entered a room or walked on stage. Once, an unruly, heckling audience of high school students sat up straight and put their hands in their laps when I showed up. Yes. Backstage, my fellow actors couldn't help but bow to me. No matter what. To this day, they still address me as Your Majesty. Sometimes you just need a role that wraps its arms around you, makes reasonable demands, but puts you in front and center as the one in the room that deserves attention. That blanket of text and the people of the theater, together, simply put, felt magnificent. The only challenging technical requirement was that I had to speak fluidly, flawlessly, without hesitation, and I can proudly tell you that I never failed. I didn't stumble, not once, not in all those more than 50 performances, and excuse me while I fluff my feathers a bit, and my reviews included superb, slyly, imperiously funny, deliciously intimidating and amusing, played neatly with strength, force, and humility. Maggie and I had agreed a while back that to counteract the despair and fear taking over the world, that any play that we were ever going to do together was going to have hope, love, and humor in it. Well, that is Shakespeare in love to a T. The entire production was perfection. I had a spacious 2-room bedroom apartment to myself that was just blocks from the theater and the Hudson River, where I walked every day speaking my lines out into the open air. I had my art supplies with me and I completed a sculpture, and if that weren't enough, Carl came to visit, saw the show a bazillion times, loved it. And while confessing one morning at breakfast with Maggie at a little diner on Pearl Street that, although he had always known me as a shapeshifter, he hadn't been able to visualize me as the Queen until he actually saw me on stage when he said, "Duh." Well, thank heavens that Maggie could see it. That our relationship had evolved since 1976, when she couldn't see me as anything more than a stone-cold, humorless bitch, and had cast me as the heartless, snobby Ruth in Joe Egg instead of the nurturing mother that I should have played. But as the years rolled on, she cast me in an eclectic number of roles that led her to not just believe, but know I had the queen in me. She also knew, as my 5 decades long friend, that I needed this bit of saving grace, this vital, healing interlude that both grounded and lifted me up, gave me strength to navigate the next 4 years, which truthfully weren't that easy. Ruthie and Hank died, and after 2.5 years of living with us, my mother finally passed just a month ago today. But that is a story for another time. Because the point right now is that my friend, out of love, offered me a respite. And I, fortunately, had the courage to crawl out from under my grief and stress, to accept the challenge, so that today, infused with the essence of the Queen, who is now and forever a part of me, I get to say with enormous gratitude, "Yay, I did that!"